Following this Saturday's Civil War matchup, the Ducks will have completed a third of the regular season already. But through the first 3 games, what has stood out most to me about this 2025 Oregon squad? Plus, a complete Oregon State scouting report and my full preview and prediction of Saturday's matchup that will take place within the walls of Autzen Stadium. It's Corvallis versus Eugene on this edition of That Show Out West.
This place has everything. In fact, the grass is damn green in Eugene.
That performance deserves a holy wallawa.
It's a feeling you cannot explain.
This place is louder than any other venue in the Big Ten.
This program is staged to compete and to win championships.
Welcome to the Big Ten, Oregon!
And welcome to That Show Out West for that team out west. I'm Ted LaRue. It just feels different. It's not the same. The feelings that I have surrounding the Civil War are a lot different than when I watched this team. Remember, I started following this program in 2007, and I remember one of the games that I really look forward to watching Oregon throughout the early following for me, and of course throughout the years that I continued to follow this program, was the Civil War matchup against Oregon State. Now, that's just me, someone who's been following this team only since 2007. I can only imagine people that grew up in this state, that maybe live near Oregon State fans, that worked with some Beavs in their office. It's important to have this in-state rivalry. And we will continue to have this in-state rivalry after a break in 2026, but more on that here in just a moment. But with this game, it's kind of gotten me a little bit retrospective as it pertains to this Civil War matchup. But before I get to that, I want to share a fun story that I had with some Oregon State folks while I was out in the state of Oregon, in northeastern Oregon, out in the Wallowas, doing a hike, looking over Wallowa Lake. Beautiful place on the Chief Joseph Trail out there. I got a family kind of coming by me. Some kids come by. Mom goes by. Dad goes by, and then what I assume to be like the grandpa of the group or something like that. Right as he's about to pass my shoulder, he stops, elbows me a little bit, and leans in and says, "Go Beavs." And he could see me wearing my green and yellow Duck shirt, and I saw there was a lot of orange shirts out there. I didn't see any Duck shirts out there in northeastern Oregon, but I did see some Oregon State bumper stickers. I saw some window stickers. I saw some T-shirts and all of that. Kind of makes sense. Eastern Oregon is the more agricultural portion of the state. Oregon State was known as Oregon Agricultural College from 1888 to 1937. They've got some great agricultural programs, to my knowledge, what I've been told out there. So that connection seems to make sense. But here's what I want to recall. And there were a group of 3 consecutive years and 3 consecutive games that really stood out to me as it pertains to this rivalry. Now, is it these 3 consecutive games that got me a lot more interested in Duck football as the years went on? Maybe, possibly. 2008, 2009, 2010. Remember, this was just 1 year after I really started having the Ducks on my radar and really starting to follow them. Let's start with 2008. Oregon State is in a position to get to the Rose Bowl. Oregon State is 1 win away from their first trip to Pasadena in 44 years. Oregon is not in a position to win the Pac-10 title. Oregon is not in a position to go to Pasadena. The Ducks are in a position to play the absolute spoiler, and this game is in Corvallis as well, and the Ducks did just that. They played spoiler, a 65-38 win to spoil the season of the Beavs on that particular day. Now you go to 2009. Okay, so the year before in 2008, you got Oregon State, but not Oregon with a chance to go to the Rose Bowl. Now it's a winner-take-all quasi-Pac-10 championship game with the winner going to Pasadena and winning the Pac-10 title. Oregon entered with a 7-1 conference record. Oregon State was sitting there at 6-2. Arizona and Stanford already had 3 Pac-10 losses. So everything was on the line at Autzen Stadium in Eugene. The Ducks won a great game, 37-33, behind 166 yards, 3 touchdowns from the Michael James, 138 receiving yards from one of my favorite receivers of this era, Mr. Jeff Mayle. And then you go to 2010. Now, Oregon State was not as good of a football team in 2010, but it was as good of a team that the Ducks have had throughout their history. Oregon was on the doorstep of going to the national championship game. They needed to just win this one game in Corvallis to get there, and that's exactly what they did. A 37-20 win over the Beavers. From 1998 to 2007, Oregon State won 6 of 10 meetings against the Ducks. It was very back and forth. But from 2008 to 2015, the Ducks won 8 straight in this series and averaged 46.3 points per game during that stretch. But since that 98 to 07 stretch that I talked about, Oregon has won 14 of the last 17 meetings and has absolutely dominated this series, and they show no signs of letting up because of where these two teams have gone in the current landscape of college football. Now, I want to take that, and now I want to focus on the present. And now I want to be able to focus on the future. Because it was reported this week by the Oregonian and Oregon Live that Oregon and Oregon State have agreed to renew the series from 2027 until at least 2032. Now, I want to say this right off the bat. I am glad that this series is renewed. But you also have to understand, like I said at the beginning, that this game just doesn't, it will not pack the same punch. It will not carry the same power than it did in the past. I think like the best case scenario that this rivalry can really get to is Oregon continues to stay at their level, right? They're a top Big Ten program. They're a playoff team. And I think if Oregon State can get up to that situation, get up to that stance where they're one of the top teams in the group of 6, Oregon could win this for the rest of our lifetime. So it's going to be very different. Oregon needs to find a way to also maintain their 7 home games every year. My guess, I don't think this has been confirmed, but my guess is that this is going to be an alternating series. Oregon gets it at home one year, Oregon State, Oregon State, etc., so on and so forth. But it could be a little bit of a challenge, especially if they want to schedule an SEC home and home with somebody, a Big 12 home and home, an ACC home and home against maybe some of this higher caliber of competition. The years that Oregon has 4 home conference games, it obviously means they're going to have 5 games on the road. So all of their non-conference games need to be at home. So that Oregon State game that year needs to be at home. But in those other years where they have 5 conference games, they can have 5 home conference games. They can have 1 non-conference game on the road. And that's Oregon State. So you can kind of see the scheduling hiccups it could possibly cause if they want to keep those 7 home games, but they also want a home and home with somebody else. I remember Rob Mullins, the athletic director at Oregon, did an interview with George Reister, and he says, hey, we like to have a Western FCS game, a Western Group of 5, Group of 6 game, and then maybe a Power 4 game as well. I think Oregon State is going to slide in very nicely to that annual Group of 6 game every single year, and I'm glad that the two sides have been doing this because there are reasons for both the Ducks and the Beavers to not continue this series going forward. I think another big reason why I like this rivalry staying put is because of travel. We know there's a ton of cross-country travel in the Big Ten for the Ducks now, so to be able to have like the year that this is an away game and you got to just do a 45-minute drive up to Corvallis, yeah, you'll take that. You'll take that. And then you just got 4 other away games that given year. I think that provides a really good travel situation. I hope that this game goes beyond 2032. I hope that this thing kind of keeps going. But I think another factor in this game keeping on the schedule is maybe what Oregon State continues to evolve with, how they evolve as a program, if they can get better. And maybe this can be more of a competitive game. Because the truth of the matter could be if Oregon just continues to absolutely dominate, the game has already lost some luster. It could continue to lose its luster over time. But if the Beavs can be one of those top group of 6 programs, this could be a somewhat intriguing matchup on a year-by-year basis. During the season, TSOW is all about the ball that's being played on the field right here, right now. But I've said this before. If there are enough significant recruiting stories in season, then we're going to take a trip down the Oregon recruiting trail while the season is going on. And there are significant recruiting headlines going on right now surrounding some 5-star Oregon commits within this 2026 class. So let's get in our covered wagons. Let's get in our stagecoaches. Let's take a trip down the Oregon recruiting trail right now. And a lot of it has to do with other schools' pursuits to be able to flip some of these Duck commitments right now. I want to start with 5-star offensive tackle Emmanuel Ahinacho. He visited LSU, I believe it was last week. Now, we're going to be talking about another 5-star player that could possibly be in a flip conversation from Oregon to another school. But as it pertains to Manny, I don't really have a lot of fear as it pertains to a flip right now. Here's what he had to say following his visit to LSU. He says, quote, "I still like LSU. They are still number 2 for me. I'm still committed to Oregon, but I had a great visit. LSU is recruiting me really well. They made me feel at home. It was a great atmosphere." So where he says they're still number 2, I'm still committed to Oregon, that feels really strong for Manny. And I think a lot of the intel really suggests that LSU is going to continue to push. Penn State is going to continue to push, but Oregon is in a really good position right now. Manny has talked about the connection that he's made with Elite Terry and this offensive line coaching staff, and just how at home he really feels and how Oregon feels like the right fit. Nacho will be at the Penn State game in Happy Valley next weekend, and then he'll be home at the USC game at Autzen Stadium a little bit later in the year. So he's going to see the Ducks a couple of times. Boy, that could really put the icing on the cake if the Ducks go into Happy Valley and get the win while he's out there as well. Now, let's go to another 5-star edge, top player in the state of Alabama, Mr. Anthony Tank Jones. Now, he took a visit, and we knew that these visits were going to happen not only for Manny, but for Tank Jones and some of these other players that are committed to the Ducks right now. But Tank Jones took a visit to Miami. I believe it was for the Notre Dame game early in the season. And now he's taken another visit down to Coral Gables this weekend. So that's 2 visits to the same school, both on-campus visits, 4 games within a 30-day period. And this is like in the Oregon fan base and maybe some of the national recruiting reporters, this is something that maybe turns heads a little bit. It perks your ears up. It gets your antennas up a little bit because I'm like, that's a lot in a short period of time. It clearly signals that Miami is pushing, and they are pushing hard right now. Now, I got a question on Twitter about this visit. At CountityVOD says, on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being not concerned at all, and 10 being it'll happen pretty soon, how concerned do we need to be of a flip? My answer is a 4, and I'm going to tell you why. I think right now the Hurricanes are dealing with 2 M's. Now, one of the M's they have had for a while, and they're going to continue to have year-round. But the other M is one that they really have in their back pocket right now. Money. This is a program that is well-resourced. This is a program that is well-funded. This should not be a surprise to anybody. But the other M is momentum. This is a Miami team that they feel like last year they underperformed, for the better part of 20 to 25 years. It really hasn't lived up to the Miami expectations. But right now, they've got one of the best teams out there in college football. They got a win against Notre Dame. They're playing really good ball right now. So Mario Cristobal wants to be able to take advantage of that and strike while the iron is hot, maybe with some of these recruits to maybe combine both of these M's and see if that can equal into a flip. Does M plus M equals flip? To me, I don't think so. I want to reference comments from Tank Jones' dad, and that's another reason why I believe this is a 4 right now. Tank's dad, when he was asked in a Steve Wiltfong article, what would it take to be able to flip his son? Quote, "Oh man, that would take a lot. As of right now, everything is going its course. Oregon feels like a second home." I feel at 4 right now because if it's above 5, I think that means that I'm leaning that he's going to flip to Miami. If it's below 5, I believe that he's going to stay at Oregon. But the reason why I have it at 4 is because Oregon needs to keep on doing what they're doing in his recruitment, and having those 2 visits to Miami is building a little bit of momentum right now for Anthony Tank Jones, and you want to be able to certainly keep the momentum in your favor. Tank Jones was on campus in Eugene for Oregon's huge 69-3 win over Oklahoma State. All right, let's talk about the last thing. The updated Rivals 300 was recently released a couple of weeks here into the high school football season. Oregon dropped from number 3 to number 4. Devin Jackson, the safety out of Florida. Jalen Lott, the wide receiver out of Texas. They were big risers. Devin Jackson is actually now a higher rated safety than Jet Washington. Devin sits there at number 65 overall. Jalen Lott at number 31 overall. That's kind of the recruiting roundup, the update on the trail. Now it's time to get into a little bit of ball. I said pretty regularly coming into this season, it was all about figuring what you got. It was all about figuring how good that your roster is. It was all about figuring who you got, who's going to plug into some of these starting roles, who's going to be plugging into these significant roles more often for when you get to Happy Valley in game number 5. When you get to Happy Valley and you got to play one of the best teams in the country. That's what these first 4 games were. They had a huge talent advantage. It was all about getting the best version of Oregon and when the Ducks go out east on September 27th. I've got a lot of takeaways, I think, early on. I think we've learned a lot thus far through 3 games. I don't think the extra game against Oregon State is really going to teach us that much. I don't think the starters are going to be on the field for very long, to be brutally honest with you. Maybe we'll learn a little bit more, but we certainly won't learn a lot more. So I think we got a pretty good gauge on what this team is going to be headed into that game against Penn State. Now, before I get into maybe some of my individual players' takeaways from this team so far, I want to get into like a 10,000-foot view, an overall view of Oregon football, and my big takeaway for the Ducks so far. And it's pretty simple. I think Oregon has started with a higher floor in this season than I and a lot of people expected them to. I thought Oregon, the way they're playing right now, I thought that was maybe how we would see Oregon like the middle of the year, maybe like game 7, game 8. I always thought that this team, because of all of the new pieces, young pieces, transfer pieces, guys that have been on the team that are now getting their opportunity to get in the lineup, I thought like, okay, you want to call them growing pains, you can call them whatever you want. But I thought it might take a couple of cranks on the lawnmower, I always use that analogy, to really get the engine humming. But that engine has been humming since game 1 and game 2. You can talk about the competition, and I get that. I understand that. But this team just is playing with a lot of confidence early in the season. A lot of position groups are gelling together faster than I expected them to, I think. And that's a big credit to Dan Lanning. That's a big credit to this coaching staff. Said at the beginning of the season, these coaches, for multiple reasons, are going to be tested just how good they are at developers. And I think what you've seen so far in this season really shows you, I think, just what they've been able to do from a talent development standpoint to get a lot of these new players ready to go for the season. Like, what can this team, if this is where they're starting, I thought this is where they would maybe be in the middle of the year, maybe a little bit later in the year. Now, once we get to the middle of the year and later in the year, just how high can they go? That's I think the thing is you got to keep going up and up and up. You kind of can't plateau a little bit. We'll see if they can keep launching out into space. Now, let's get into my specific takeaways around this roster through 3 games. Number 1, and I think it's been one of the biggest takeaways and maybe one of the biggest surprises for a lot of people, Mekhi Hughes is just flat out buried on the depth chart. I thought, we heard in fall camp, and I even said this before fall camp, but we heard some intel in fall camp that said, all right, Noah Whittington, he's doing his thing. He's going to be more involved than maybe a lot of people anticipated. He's really competing for a lot of carries. And when I heard that, I'm like, okay, I think you're going to see, and remember back in my bold predictions episode, I said, we're not going to have a 1,000-yard rusher because I thought Mekhi Hughes and Noah Whittington would kind of be split with those carries. It'd be a 1A and 1B, maybe a lot like Trevion Henderson and Quinshon Judkins last year at Ohio State. But Mekhi Hughes isn't even getting to that point. Mekhi Hughes isn't even like RB4 or at this point. I'm not even sure where he stands on the depth chart. In that RB4, RB5 type of conversation, it certainly is where he's sitting right now. He hasn't gotten a ton of snaps. And when Mekhi has gotten onto the field, unlike some of these other guys that we're going to be talking about here in just a minute, he's not making the most of his opportunities. Something just like what we saw last year on his film at Tulane and what we've seen so far from him carrying the football, it just something seems off. He's not running with the same pop. He's not running with the same explosion. Not only that he did last year, but with some of these other running backs on the roster, he looks a little bit timid. In some cases, his vision doesn't look all that great in some of those runs. And you could say, well, maybe on some of these runs, the offensive line isn't helping him out. He's not getting enough opportunities to maybe show what he can do. And maybe there's a little bit of truth to that. But there's a lot of other running backs on this team that aren't getting a ton of opportunities. But when they touch the ball, good things happen. That's a big standout for me of what has happened with Mekhi Hughes. And it's not only Mekhi. Like Dink Riggs is another one that has kind of surprised me a little bit as well. We knew iron sharpens iron. There was going to be a ton of competition in this running back room. Who was going to be the top 3? Who was going to be the top 4 in that type of conversation? I think a lot of people, it's not just me, a lot of people thought Mekhi, Noah, and Dink Riggs. That's going to be mainly your rotation. And then when you get to some of these younger guys, you get some guys that have been in here for a while. Okay, maybe, when some of these guys like the Noahs and Mekhi leave after a year, maybe they're going to slide in and you'll see more of them the next season. But you're seeing more of those aforementioned guys this season. So Dink Riggs is another guy where it's just like a lot of hype, a lot of talk with him coming into the season, and he's just been outperformed by some of the other players that have made the most out of their opportunities. In the running back room, the players that have made the most of their opportunities are these true freshmen. De'Aaron Hill out of Illinois, and of course, Jordan Davison out of Mater Dei. And like I talked about it recently with De'Aaron Hill. Every time he touches the ball, it turns to gold. He is extremely explosive. And during the spring and during fall camp, we continue to hear hype on top of hype on top of hype, good things on top of good things on top of good things, not only as it pertains to Hill, but also as it pertained to Jordan Davison as well. A lot of people were very impressed with what they brought to the table. And they just needed, all of those reps to be able to kind of formulate within this offense. And they've done certainly exactly that right now. I've been calling for more De'Aaron Hill carries. I hope we see that. I think one thing we've learned from the skill positions, running back, wide receiver, you need to be a complete player. That involves pass blocking. That involves kind of getting out in front of some of these other runs and other situations and what you need to do. Dan Lanning has talked about how good a pass blocker Jay Harris is. Jade Lamar is doing some things to be a more complete back as well. Maybe like someone like De'Aaron is maybe not on the level in that department of the running game that some other guys are, but however you get De'Aaron's hands on the football, you need to be able to do that. I think that's very obvious, and I'll keep saying that. Right now, De'Aaron, he leads the team in rushing. Now, no, Whittington was not available last week. That's why, but 161 yards. Davison leads the team in rushing touchdowns. I think when all is said and done, Davison's probably going to lead this team in rushing touchdowns. And I thought, like, what these guys, and that kind of goes up to what I said at the beginning, where it's like, everything seems just like it's got a faster progression. Things are ahead of schedule a lot more, and that's the way it goes with these true freshman running backs. I thought what we're seeing now is what I thought we would see in 2026. But now we're seeing it in 2025. And then you look at the future for 2026 and beyond. This is very much the Thunder and Lightning. It's the De'Aaron Hill and Jordan Davison show starting next season. So I think you're going to maybe this offseason, I know we're looking a long ways away. We still got a long way to go. We got 66% of the season almost to go here coming up after this weekend. But I'm really curious to see how things shake out starting next season, because I think it's very clear to me that Davison and Hill are going to be that tandem, I believe, going forward. So just how the running back room has shaken out and how Jaden Lamar has stepped up, I mean, all of it has been pretty surprising to me. I'm not going to lie. I think a key thing that I've got my eye on as well for the running, how does this room evolve? Like last week we saw when Noah's not in there, I'm not like crazy about having a guy back there without Noah Whittington when number 6 is not there. And we're hoping that Noah can stay healthy. You get a lot of depth from the rest of this room. You can keep him fresh towards the end of the year. I think that's got to be the goal for Will Stein in this offense going forward. But I don't think you have a guy back there like Noah that can run with speed, that can run with power, that has a lot of combination, that you can run 15, 20 times a game. Like I said, I like De'Aaron Hill's explosiveness on the perimeter. I like Jordan Davison, and what he can do between the tackles. And we saw what happened kind of last week with Jade Lamar. I saw a few plays on film where he kind of misread a play a little bit. So I think the goal's got to be keep Noah Whittington healthy, and I think you'll feel pretty good. Beyond that, now that you don't have an experienced guy like Mekhi Hughes that's stepping up to the occasion, where does that running back room get to after you go on? I think we're going to learn a lot about the answer to that question, Penn State, Indiana. And once we get to the middle of the year, I think we'll have a better idea of which one of these guys can maybe step up truly into that number 2 role outside of Noah Whittington right now. Let's move on to quarterback. We always knew that Dante Moore had the talent. We always knew that Dante Moore could throw it. He could throw it into a tight window. I mean, he could throw it further than almost everybody else. That's not a surprise. I think one thing that's really stood out to me earlier in this season is just his confidence and his comfort within the offense. And overall, like the comfort and the confidence, I should say, probably really shouldn't be too much of a surprise since he kind of went back to he's learned this offense for more time than Dylan Gabriel certainly learned this offense. He's been in this offense now for a full year last year, full spring, full fall. I mean, there's a lot of time he spent learning under Will Stein right now, but it's just he's really been able to grasp the leadership role. He's been able to grasp the ability to be a field general and just his poise and his coolness and his confidence. When you have other hyped quarterbacks like Arch Manning at Texas, DJ Lagway at Florida, someone like even like a Lenora Stellars at South Carolina. Some of these SEC quarterbacks that were really hyped up not playing as well. I think quarterback play overall maybe hasn't really stood out, but Dante Moore is certainly standing out. He's not making mistakes. He's making all the right reads. He's making wow throws. He's making the simple throws. He's doing everything that he needs to do. And I've said this before, and I'll say it again, and I'll say it a million times. Dante feels like a quarterback where he makes everybody better around him and he lifts up everybody. He is the high tide that is raising all of the boats right now for this Oregon offense, I believe, around him. And I believe he's the guy that can lift Oregon to a new level, certainly this season. I want to go to the defensive side of the ball, and then I'll flip back to offense. I think overall, the defense has been playing expectably really good football. The guys that we talked about in the beginning in the offseason leading into the season have played well. Mateo's got 3 sacks in as many games. Yeah, we expected that. Tatum Tuioti, yeah, we expected him to play how he's been playing thus far. Amari Washington is a freaking beast on the inside. It's a deep defensive line rotation. Bryce Betcher, like the Dylan Thienemans of the world. Like, we all expected them to play how they've been playing, and it's a really good unit so far. But I want to highlight 2 guys on defense at positions where they were not expected to be in the starting roles that they're in and the starting roles that they've, I think, really solidified through these first 3 games. Inside linebacker Jerry Mixon and true freshman corner Brandon Finney. They have really stood out. Dare I say surprised with some of these performances. Maybe it shouldn't be ultra surprising. Jerry Mixon played a really good game in the spring. Brandon Finney was really turning heads over there in fall camp. Jerry Mixon is the highest graded player, PFF grade on defense right now with 91.5. And he's the highest graded coverage guy as well, 92.7. He works sideline to sideline. Maybe not perfect. Needs to get a little bit better in some of his run reads and some of his run rules and going through his keys a little bit and making those plays. But not only is the Jerry Mixon level of play, not only is it appreciated, thank you, Jerry, by the way, not only that, but it's needed. Okay, it's very clear Devin Jackson coming off of an injury. So far, maybe he'll get back to form later in the season, but he's not looking like that same player. Not looking like that same athleticism, certainly right now. You got the injuries to Braden Platt and Dylan Williams. So this is something that the depth is not as strong right now as maybe it will be a little bit later on during the season. But the way Jerry is playing, he is establishing himself. I think there's games where he's the best linebacker on the field. And you got old 28 back there. That's pretty damn good as well. So Jerry, a very welcome surprise doing what he's been able to do so far this season. Let's go to the secondary. Brandon Finney. If you want to talk about freshman defensive backs, everybody was talking about Offord. Everybody was talking about McNutt. Obviously, McNutt had the injury. And right now, Brandon Finney is playing above Naeem Offord's level right now. He's assignment sound. He's making plays in the pass game. He's making plays in the run game. I think the great thing about these corners, like Iffy, you don't hear anything about Iffy because he's locking off a side of the field. You don't really maybe hear as much on the broadcast about Brandon Finney because he's doing now. They haven't been tested a lot. I think that's certainly worth noting. How is Brandon going to play when they get to Penn State, when they get to Indiana? You know, some of these teams that are a little bit more dynamic on the offense. His size and speed combination, huge benefit. I think you're seeing what happens when you have defensive backs 6'1", 6'2", 200, 210 pounds. You see how much better that these guys are, and they're going to continue to play. So I love Brandon Finney right now over at that other corner spot. That's certainly a big-time takeaway where, like, again, he seems ahead of schedule. He seems like he's playing at a higher level, and that's why I cited that as the overall theme, because I think you could talk about that theme with a lot of these players that are stepping up into big-time roles. Someone that stepped up into a big-time role on offense, Malik Benson. Right? When Evan Stewart goes down with an injury, we know DeCorian Moore is going to be the first wide receiver. But it's like, okay, who's going to be some of these other wide receivers that's got to step up? We got to have somebody, at least one other guy that's going to step up into a big time role. The thing that's impressed me the most right now about Malik Benson is his consistency. And Oregon is putting a lot of trust into him to be able to go out there and make plays when they do put the ball in the air. When Oregon is passing the ball, they call a passing play. He's out there more than anyone, 97.7% of the time. Now, he hasn't struggled with drops. He's very reliable. He's catching the ball. Maybe that was something that was brought up as, hey, let's see how it's going to be when he came in. Transferring over from Florida State, but he can just do everything. He's sure-handed, as I said before. He can work the middle. He's got a bunch of speed over the top as a deep threat. He is a truly veteran, do-it-all presence within this pass game as well. He's the guy that has stepped up the most at this position. You continue to rely on his consistency, and Dante continues to look his way when he needs a play. Good things are going to happen, and he's going to continue to get better. He's getting targeted consistently every single game. Last thing that I want to talk about that stood out to me, man, the perimeter blocking. These dudes are grinding out there. And I think one guy deserves a lot of credit. I think Ross Douglas deserves a ton of credit right now. No block, no rock, as they said during a previous broadcast. It's a big change, I think, from previous years. Not trying to deter anything that Junior Adams did. He did a tremendous job here, but it just seems like a change in mindset, not only for these wide receivers, but some of these running backs, some of these tight ends as well. It just seems like a fresh perspective and something that they're doing much better this season than they've certainly done in years past. Like when you got DeCorian Moore, Jeremiah McClellan, Gary Bryant Jr., all those guys are top 5 on the team in Pro Football Focus run blocking grades. That should say a lot about what these guys, the effort and the want to out on the perimeter. Because for a wide receiver, that's what it is. When you got DeCorian Moore driving guys into the ground, when you've got, some of these other guys that I mentioned, Kenyon Sadiq and all these guys, when you got them going out there, it's all about like culture. It's all about your mindset throughout the week, that this is what we have to do to spring some of these big explosive plays. And I think some of these, the perimeter blocking out there has been a big factor of why Oregon has been able to spring some more explosive plays in the short pass game and also the run game this season. Folks, you got a higher launching point than you have, I think, the last couple of years. Where is this team going to go? Well, we'll see. We know the ultimate test is coming up when they come to Happy Valley in a couple of weeks. All right, everybody, it is time to dive headfirst into this Civil War matchup. And as we do every week, we begin with the TSOW Scouting Report, everything you need to know about the Ducks' upcoming foe, and you all know who it is. It is the Beavers of Oregon State University. Now, this rivalry is called the Civil War, and I am going to do everything in my power to remain as civil as possible throughout this report. Because to be brutally honest with you, there's not a lot of good things to say about this Oregon State program right now. They are in a rough spot. It is not good for everybody in Corvallis right now that's wearing the orange and black. They're out to an 0-3 start. And if you look at two of their opponents, you might think it's like, oh yeah, those teams, they come from a Power 4 conference, they're more talented than the Beavs right now. And that might be, you don't maybe want to say, you don't want to accept these losses, certainly, but you might understand that they came up short. Of course, Cal, to start the season, they lost 34-15. Golden Bears and Justin Wilcox, they look pretty good right now. They're led by Oregon legend, Jaron Kivawi Asankapulatele. They're doing good things. The way their schedule looks, they could maybe be a playoff team when all is said and done out there in Berkeley. And then you look at the game that they played this past weekend. Look, Texas Tech. They're a ranked Big 12 team. They got a big matchup against Utah this week. They're one of, Utah and Texas Tech are probably the top two teams in the Big 12 conference right now. So those are teams that are just, they play at a different level than you, and they're more talented than you. But I think the loss that really stings the most and has Oregon State fans maybe most frustrated right now is the one smack dab in the middle. And that's the loss to their future conference foe and now current Mountain West team, that being the Fresno State Bulldogs. But we'll get to that game and really why it's so frustrating here in just a moment. But, the big overarching thing when I look at it and talk about this program, Trent Bray is sitting there in the Willamette River. He's on a boat. And, there's lots of distance when he looks to his right. There's lots of distance when he looks to his left, and he looks into his hands, and I got nothing. I got nothing to steer with right now. He is up a creek without a paddle. He is at a talent disparity. We'll get into, some position groups and how they kind of stack up and why maybe things are struggling the way they are right now. And then you look to the other side, the fan base is, I don't want to say livid, but there are a lot of questions. There's a lot of frustrations. I don't know about the administrative support right now. There's just nothing to row with. There's nothing to paddle with to really gain momentum right now for Oregon State as it stands at this moment. I want to begin on the offensive side of the football, and I want to begin at the quarterback position. Now, Oregon State went out and they spent some money, over $1 million, to go out and get Malik Murphy out of the transfer portal from Duke. And the fact of the matter is, he's his arm talent. Remember, he started at Texas, went to Duke, and he had put up some good numbers at Duke last year. And that's what Oregon State was hoping for, that would spark them to maybe be a better team this year. But maybe the money that they spent on someone like Murphy, and we know that, a program like Oregon State doesn't have the most money to throw around. Maybe they spent a lot of money on the quarterback, but, the rest of the team maybe is lacking a little bit in talent. And I think, arm talent-wise, Murphy will be the best, probably most talented quarterback, if you want to put it that way, that Oregon has faced so far this season. Of course, Justin Lamson at Montana State. In Oklahoma State, they were riding with their backup quarterback in that one, in Zane Flores as well. So I'm not saying we're setting an extremely high bar here, but Malik certainly has has the tools in his toolbox that maybe are a little bit more advanced than what Oregon has seen so far throughout the season against teams like Montana State, against teams like Northwestern, Preston Stone. I like Preston Stone and Malik Murphy. I think are pretty comparable. Is when things are on schedule, they have the tools to be able to deliver the quick ball down the field and move the chains. But when things get off schedule, they tend to put the ball in harm's way. And that's where I want to go right now, because when Malik Murphy is under pressure, he's a different quarterback. His numbers look completely different. His mechanics change. He's throwing off of his back foot, and he's just making bad decisions with the football when there's guys in his face. He doesn't handle pressure right now very well. We'll get to maybe the whole pressure thing here in just a minute. But in terms of the guys that Malik is going to attempt to throw the football to, Trent Walker is a receiver that the Ducks have to keep an eye on. They saw him last year when these two teams matched up in Corvallis. He's got 302 yards receiving this season. Taz Reddix and David Wells, they're okay. They're fine. I think Trent Walker is very clearly the top receiver on this Oregon State team this season. Here's the thing about, and what I've seen kind of on the film from Oregon State, is what they want to do. maybe I should say this differently. I'll save that for later of what they want to do when things are on schedule. What they've been doing on tape within their offense. They show a lot of short, quick stuff. They want to try to get shots down the field, but with maybe their offensive line, which we'll get to in just a minute, it prevents them from doing that. It's a lot of quick outs. I noticed throwing to the sideline over there. 65.1% of their passes are either behind the line of scrimmage or within 9 yards. When you don't have the offensive line to give you time, a lot of times the short stuff is the only stuff that's there, especially if you have a decent pass rush on the other side. You got to try to get rid of the football quickly and try to move the chains that way. Now, that percentage increases to 86 when factoring 10 to 19 yard passes down the field. I think, now getting back to the way they want to play, what do they want to do? I think in a perfect world that they want to try to run the football on the early downs, first down, second down, have some success there, running the football with Anthony Hankerson, and then they want to try to work off play action. Some of their play action concepts, it's kind of a very widely used and a well-known kind of RPO type of concept where, if you're not running the ball, if you're pulling it and you throw, you bring the linebackers up and you kind of throw those in cuts, 7 to 9 yards, slants, whatever, kind of in front of the safeties and behind the linebackers to try to create some yards after catch type of situation. Anthony Hankerson, the running back, is averaging just 3.7 yards per carry. But with Malik Murphy being under pressure, a lot of short, quick passing, and then the lack of big explosive runs, it all comes back to their main issue right now. And that's the offensive line is the root of every issue that's happening right now on this Oregon State offense. It's been a musical chairs. There's been a lot of guys up there in the rotation. They've had a trouble finding consistency up front. Their center Van Wells, their guard Dylan Sikorsky, they've played over 200 snaps each, but the next highest is 152 from their guard Ryan Berger. 4 tackles have played between 54 and 132 snaps. So there's a lot of guys getting in the rotation. There's youth and inexperience in that rotation. That certainly contributed to maybe the struggles on offense. Jacob Strand has the highest PFF pass block grade, He's at 67. 3 others all in a range in the mid-50s. So they are not doing a good job allowing a talent like Malik Murphy to maybe get some things going to some of these receivers down the field and let some of these routes develop down the field. I think that's maybe why they've adjusted their offense and it's looked the way it did in some of these games so far this season. So that's kind of a look at the offensive side. You look to the defensive side of the ball. They only have 2 sacks so far this season. They're not generating a lot of pressure up front. And then one big glaring thing I noticed when I'm watching this team on tape is when you get some of these safeties, corners, linebackers, you get these guys in space, they have trouble tackling. So this isn't a team that's getting a lot of pressure up front. Then when you don't tackle well, what do you do well on the defensive side of the ball at that point? Trey Glaser has a 25.1 Pro Football Focus tackle grade. He's missed 4 of his 8 tackle attempts. He's one of those defensive backs back there. 50% on tackles. You want to be able to do better than that. Batting 500 in baseball is good. Batting 500 on wrapping guys up in the open field, yeah, that's not what you're looking for. 4 defenders that have played more than 120 snaps have a PFF tackle grade of under 50. I kind of saw a little bit of that in Texas Tech where they're getting the ball in space and they're able to break 1 tackle, 2 tackles. They turn what would have been maybe a 7 or 8 yard gain into a 15, 20, 25 yard gain. And that's just that can be really backbreaking as well for a defense. I want to talk about special teams. Now, it's not something I usually talk about in these, but with Oregon State, it has contributed. It contributed maybe solely to that loss against Fresno State right there in that middle game. Their long snapper is out with a hand injury, and they don't really have a suitable backup long snapper. Here's an excerpt from an article over at the Oregonian. With fifth-year long snapper Dylan Black sidelined with a hand injury, the Beavers botched 6 snaps on special teams, which led to a bevy of Fresno State opportunities. The bad snaps resulted in 2 missed extra points, a return touchdown, OSU's punter being tackled at his 21, and a missed field goal late in the 4th quarter. Go look up the box score. They are outgaining Fresno State by a lot. When you're just looking offense versus defense, Oregon State did everything they needed to do to be able to win that game. There was a bad snap in that game. Ball gets on the ground, and it's just ball's just trickling on the ground, and the punter just kicks it, and it dribbles like a soccer ball. The Fresno State guy just scoops it up and takes it in for a touchdown. And of course, you had that viral clip that where Trent Bray used some colorful language in that Fresno State game as well. Like, they resorted to a lot of pooch punt type of formations against Texas Tech. I don't know what their punt game is going to look like. I don't know what their field goal and their extra point game is going to look like. The simplest things, lining up in a field goal, lining up, doing punt formation, they're having troubles doing that and executing that right now on special teams. So when you put it all together, it's a tough situation right now for the Beavs coming into this Civil War matchup. There's no doubt about that. You know the foe. Now it's time to take a look at how the Quack can attack the Beavers on Saturday. Oregon State is set to make the 45-minute or so drive south to Eugene to face off against the now 6th-ranked Oregon Ducks, dropping 2 spots from last week in the AP poll. The old Quack Attack are 34.5-point favorites. That's a big old fat number right there. The over-under is 55.5. Of course, Saturday, Autzen Stadium in Eugene, 12 p.m. Pacific Time kickoff on the Big Ten Network. Now, I'm going to make as many great points as I'm going to try to make as many points as I possibly can throughout this preview and prediction, trying to be as eloquent as I possibly can. But in terms of great points, in terms of an eloquent point, I think Jerry Mixon started off pretty good during the old press conferences earlier this week.
It's a big rivalry game. Everybody pop out in Oregon. And just from being here, that they're our little bros, and we go out there and kick their ass. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I couldn't have said it better myself. Roll credits. No, I am going to preview this game. I certainly am going to predict this game. But, I think what Jerry's trying to get to there is let's set the tone early. Set the tone in the beginning of the game. Let's get out to that fast start that the Ducks saw against Montana State, that they saw against Oklahoma State, continue strong throughout the middle, and then finish strong. Oregon didn't, of course, finish the strongest with those 14 points in the back half of that game against Northwestern. So 60 minutes prove that Oregon is the much more superior program within this great state. I think the first thing that I want to talk about as far as a storyline for this game, something that I would really like to see for Oregon, is just have a dominant showing in the trenches. Last week, maybe the defensive line got pushed around a little bit. Maybe the offensive line didn't get off to their best start. And it has been an emphasis throughout practice this week to show everybody who's boss in the trenches in the state of Oregon.
One of our emphasis coming into Northwestern was to win the rushing battle and just to win the first quarter. And we won the first quarter, but like you said, it wasn't to our standards. So I think this week coming in, we definitely made that an emphasis to win the line of scrimmage using our technique and doing the best we can and just being able to move the line of scrimmage as best as we could, because that's just where the game lives, just in the trenches. So it definitely was an emphasis for us.
Well, I think this game consistently has come down to the line of scrimmage play. And again, that was a disappointment for me last week. I didn't think we handled the line of scrimmage as well as we need to. So that'll be a point of emphasis for us this week. I think it's really important. They do some things to combat that. The ball's going to come out quick. They're going to use some different stuff in protection, I'm sure, some different run game that's going to challenge you and not allow you just to tee off. So we'll just have to play what we see. And those guys have great experience. They've been good against the run. And they've been good against, when they get opportunities to rush the passer, but those may be limited in a game like this.
A great opportunity to establish that confidence early in the game. Let's start first on the offensive line. Is just running the football. Running the football right at Oregon State, really establishing those big chunk plays, 5 yards, 6 yards, 7 yards, 8 yards, and then it just makes the passing game so much stronger, certainly down the field. They've got matchup advantages. It's no secret. Oregon has huge matchup advantages in any part. So letting the big boys eat, letting them go straight ahead in the run game early in this game, it's something that I might expect to see in the early script from Will Stein. And then you look at defensively, this is an offensive line for Oregon State. They've been inconsistent. There's been a lot of guys. There's a lot of youth. There's some inexperience up there. It's been the biggest detriment to the offensive success for Oregon State. So Amari Washington, Bear Alexander, Tion Gray, Terrence Green, those guys in the rotation up the middle should be playing on the other side of the line of scrimmage every single play against an offensive line like this. Oregon State, plain and simple, they should not be able to run the ball at all. Anthony Hankerson should probably average less than 2.5 yards per carry. Like, that's how dominant they should be. I think there's so many parts of this game because this is the last game before that big-time matchup next week when they play Penn State, when they travel out to Happy Valley in central Pennsylvania. There's so much, I think, we know the talent disparity, right? But it's all about kind of building that confidence. It's your last statement to really prove to not only yourself, but prove to a lot of other people. They're obviously only really focused inside the building. FIBU, right? But I think us as fans, we're looking for that statement that this team is truly hitting on all cylinders for that big-time matchup on the road in the whiteout next week. So offensive line, defensive line, do your thing. Do what you did against Montana State. Do what you did against Oklahoma State. Dominate the trenches, and that's just that's going to be a big recipe for success, especially defensively, because if you can keep their run game in check, and then especially getting after Malik Murphy, their quarterback, who has some tools in his toolbox. He's probably the most talented quarterback that the Ducks have faced. I talked about that in my scouting report. And like Dan Lanning said in that soundbite, I think they are going to get rid of the football quickly. I'm very curious on the timing through this. Is Oregon State going to see that even before the ball kicks off and be like, we're not even going to let this happen. We're not even going to drop back to our 3-step drop, really, our 5-step drop, really. We're not going to go 15 or 20 yards down the field. We're going to try to get rid of the football quickly. We're trying to go death by 1,000 cuts. I believe that's what's going to happen. I believe that's how Oregon State is going to be able to set this thing up. Maybe do they set up that short passing game to then be able to run the ball, open things up in the middle? Maybe it's possible, but Oregon needs to be able to tackle in space. I do remember going back to that game against Montana State earlier this season. I know it was the first game. I'm sure they've kind of looked over the game tape and tried to shore up some things and clean up some things, certainly since then. But I'll say this. I mean, there was a lot. Taco Dowler was crossing all, that second half was crossing all throughout the middle. And they were able to kind of get open and create some and move the chains that way at certain points in time. So if I'm Oregon, I have to expect that those quick hitters are going to happen. I'm playing press. I'm playing bump and run. I'm playing tight at the line of scrimmage to be able to tie up those type of short passing routes because they're all timing based, right? They're all timing based. And if we can disrupt that timing, and, now all of a sudden Malik Murphy's in there for 2.5 seconds or 3 seconds. That first read's not there. That second read's not there. That's where Mateo Uyunglele can eat. That's where Tatum Tuioti can eat. That's where some of these guys coming off the edge can also eat as well, getting into the backfield. So hopefully that's kind of how Oregon will be able to kind of combat that as well. I think if Oregon State can neutralize that pass rush, how quickly is the secondary going to be able to react in some of these situations? So you got to be able to wrap up kind of a one and done mindset so they don't keep on moving the chains down the field as well. And then I kind of look at when Oregon has the ball on the offensive side, and it's kind of a very similar thing, is you got to make the Beavers defend you in space. This is another thing that I talked about during my scouting report is they do not tackle well at all. They are a bad tackling team. So you got that, and then you have the speed and the athleticism advantage. Get De'Aaron Hill out in space, man. We've seen what he can do. Get Jade Lamar out in space. We've seen what he can do. We've seen what Gary Bryant Jr., he did not have any touches last week, did not have any targets last week. So maybe this is an opportunity for number 2 to kind of get back into the swing of things. I mean, Malik Benson, right? There's so many guys, I believe, on this team that if you kind of get the screen game, the short game, get Kenyon Sadiq out there in the open field, get some of these other perimeter blockers who've been doing a really good job at that, get them kind of setting that convoy, and I think you could certainly create explosive plays in the pass game that way. So I think that, I think it's run game early, get the confidence up for these road graders on the offensive line. And if they're going to play off coverage and they're going to allow you to play in space, Will Stein, he's going to take advantage of it. He's going to hashtag feed the studs. That's what he loves to do. I think the last main point, get in, get out, right? It's a Walmart run. Get in and get out, get what you want, and stay healthy. Look, if Noah Whittington is not 100%, don't play him. Okay? DeCorian Moore, he had a little bit of a hip pointer injury this week, a little bit of a scare for the Oregon faithful. If he's not close to 95, 100%, don't play him. Okay? This is all about staying healthy. This is all about building momentum to the Big Ten matchup against the Penn State Alliance. Now, I talked about, hey, get started with the run game, maybe get the guys out in space with the pass game a little bit and create plays that way. But I think overall, just do what you do. Just execute what you execute. Execute what's on the script early in this game. This is very much an Oregon versus Oregon type of matchup. It's a raise the bar type of game. It's a continue to raise the standard and raise your confidence type of matchup against a team like Oregon State. It'd be nice to see the pass rush have that big game like I talked about, but the quick release of the ball, that might kind of neutralize that a little bit. It would be nice to be able to force some turnovers because we've seen Malik Murphy kind of do that throughout the season so far. I think one other thing to keep in mind, I saw early in the game, this Oregon State offensive line had some pre-snap penalties. Texas Tech, they were getting a little rowdy right there in Lubbock. I think that's something to really keep an eye on. And I think that's going to get, because this Autzen Stadium crowd, we've seen it time after time after time these last times. We've seen it for years, but especially, last year against Ohio State, huge crowd, forced a lot of flags. And then we've seen it this year as well for Oklahoma State as well. So I could see, because of the youth and inexperience on that offensive line, I could see them having a few pre-snap penalties. And then you really get behind the chains, and now you really allow some of your pass rushers to be able to tee off. Look, there's not much more to be able to talk about. There's not much more to be able to break down. Oregon's got a tremendous advantage. It is time to get into my prediction. I originally had 56-3. That's my prediction over there on Scoop Duck with the staff over there. I've got 56-6. I don't know if it's 2 field goals or maybe I tend to really favor towards a late touchdown. Maybe I'm going to throw the Beavs a bone on this one. It would not surprise me at all to see Oregon shut out the Beavers in this one, but to see a late touchdown, maybe in garbage time, and then a missed extra point. I'm not putting 7 on the board. As long as that special teams is the way it is right now for Oregon State, boy, have they been really struggling going with their backup long snapper and some of these short punt formations, pooch kick type of stuff as well. I think Oregon starts off fast. This game is over by halftime. It would not surprise to see it be like 35-0, 42-0 at the half, and they get a lot of guys on the field. This one's all about, because the next 2 weeks against Penn State and Indiana, those are going to be 2 good football teams, and you're going to see, that's where you're going to see the tight rotations. That's where you're going to see those starters for all 4 quarters, probably for the first time this season. So this could be like a final type of opportunity, at least maybe for a few weeks, where you could maybe see a lot of these 3rd stringers and 4th stringers on the field, and really a last chance to kind of for them to prove exactly what they can do and maybe how they can benefit the team going forward. 56-6, that's my final score. Ducks win the Civil War over the Beavers by a 50 spot. That's an over. That's a cover. I think those are both pretty safe bets this weekend. That wraps up another great edition of That Show Out West. We'll be back live for that post-game show out west on Saturday, so make sure you tune in for that. But until then, I'm Ted LaRue. Enjoy your Oregon Duck football Saturday. We will see you after the game. This has been That Show Out West.